Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's July 19th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and pretty interesting day here. Really strong rally day. We broke outside of the pink range. We broke outside of the down-sloping trend line. Is that the first clues that maybe we're getting close to finding a bottom in this market? Um, I would say yeah. It doesn't mean we found the bottom yet. It's just the first clues that, hey, because we still may attempt to make a new retest to make a new low here. We'll probably at least pull back and test the breakout area here, even if we're going to go higher a little bit further. We're getting back into oversold territory here. Or I'm sorry, now we're getting into overbought territory once we go above this purple line. Um, so yeah, we could make a measured leg up before we turn down. I don't know if I see that happening, but you never rule it out. And that would pretty much look something like this. Get us back up to here. That would come back and retest this original breakout, maybe. No, not quite. So we never did retest this when we dropped out of there, and usually you'll come back and retest that before going lower. It didn't happen that time, so we'll just have to see. But just the fact that we broke above some important resistance here means something. Again, we broke above this downsloping trend line, which that's been holding since way back in April, maybe late March, early April. And so for us to get a close outside that, that's big because it's been months. And for us to get a close outside of this resistance here, because that's been holding since June, a month or so, 3 to 4 weeks. So these are good signs. So anyway, we'll call that a target, possible target. We'll look for what happens if prices get there. Maybe that'll be a spot we'll turn down. And we could turn down instantly on this breakout. Most breakouts fail. And we should expect a possible retest of these lows at this point. But man, it sure would be nice to find a bottom here and see the market recover some. So, and generally we do get, your recoveries do come in the fall. Those are usually rally times. So we could be coming out of the summer doldrums. And I mean, this is typical for the summer to get something like this on the daily chart, because a lot of your institutional traders, your large traders, they're all taking vacations, and their kids are out of school, and they're spending more time with their family. And then come fall, everybody's back to the rush and back into the back at the grind again and going strong with everything. So pretty typical so far. Anyway, I thought it was interesting that we did get that close. I mean, this is a really strong rally day. I mean, how big a day is this? From low to high, we closed almost on the high. That's 115 points. It's a pretty nice rally. So we'll see where we go from here. Let's flip over to the intraday chart and go through the trades, and it's kind of interesting too. But we'll talk about that when we get there, and we'll wrap this day up. Okay, here we are. We started out in this blue channel here, and generally when your channels will start out steeper and kind of fold over and go flatter. Well, today they got steeper. We started out in the light blue, almost gray looking, and then we accelerated. And people will probably say, well, how did you know to look for that? And let me move this. Oops. Let me move this out of the way here. And I'll kind of think yeah, there we go. Notice how we were not getting back to the trend line, and then we're not getting back to the upper trend channel. Then we shot through it. It's like something's changed. And so that's when you should say, hey, maybe there's another trend channel or trend. There's something else going on here. And if you just start looking around, I think I actually started it from right here. And you can see that trend line holds the rest of the way up until you get a break and new high, and then you just kind of sold off for a while before pushing up one more time at the close. And if you drag that to the top, and you can clearly see, let's do this. Let's move this one out of the way. And now you can clearly see that midline and all that coming into play. I mean, there's no doubt that's a valid trend. But there's no doubt this early one was valid and in play as well. So let's do this. What we'll do is we'll play this original trend for a bit, and then when we get up in here, we'll put the other one back. You wouldn't actually known for sure where this one was until you at least got that first swing right there. You'd have had an idea then. Still wouldn't know because you couldn't really find the upper side until it overshot way up here. But you would know the trend lines there. You just don't know where the other side of it's at. So let's just move this out of the way for a few minutes so it's not so cluttered and so hard to read. But anyway, you had to be real patient this morning because we were stuck in this early. And then from there on, we took off. And there's no news or anything that we did an FOMC member speaking today. But that day wasn't until 1:35. And the day's almost over by then. And maybe he said something that could have accelerated it later in the day. But, that's not what this rally's about. So anyway, let's start down here. 7 o'clock came we had a trend up. We had a correction, 2 legs down. It looked like we were going to go higher and it fails. There is I'm not sure what time that bar closed. It was right at 7 o'clock or so. So if you were here and ready, you might take that trade as a failure. Prices will probably at least come back to the EMA. But you can clearly see we had this. There's a channel. I don't have it on here, but let me put it on here because sometimes people are not everybody can see this without looking at it. I've looked at it so long I can see it without even drawing it anymore. But anyway, you get your break. You try to go higher twice and it fails. So they're going to trap long, especially look at that bar right there. You're going to probably at least get a scalp out of it. Maybe just back to the EMA, maybe a new low. But it makes a really nice move down to a new low. So maybe you go short right there. I didn't mark it. I wasn't quite ready to trade yet. It was probably 7:20 or so before I had my charts ready to go. But anyway, if you're here and you're sitting there and you see that, you could even argue there's a triple test there maybe. But semi-decent short. We run up here, turn down, and it makes one tick lower right there. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it makes one tick lower below that red bar and then turns up. And that's going to trap people to the short side. That's a higher low after this is played out, and we're probably going higher. We're probably going to retest this high right here at a very minimum. And so I like taking that to the long side. I'm not sure. There's a little bit of stem there, and that's a fairly big bar, so I don't know. I mean, I think you'd still be all right to go long right there, but I'd probably play this on the engulfing bar because you're going to catch the trap, and more stops are going to be here. And you can see how it rockets up for a minute and then kind of pauses before more buying comes in. So, if you waited up here to buy, it's a little riskier. Engulfing bars can be tricky anyway, but I like that one because it's a sure trap that's going to catch people. And runs on up. There's no any other longs up here. And then you come back, you actually get a close outside here, and you get a first entry, second entry. This is a little sideways here. It still looks like 2 legs down though, so I think you could treat this as a second entry. But you might just say, hey, this looks like a double top, and this looks like a first entry, and you might skip that one. So I marked it green because but that clearly looks like a leg to me. It's not 3 bars side by side like you have right here. That actually made a new high and trended down, had a correction, and then made a second leg down. That's what it looks like to me. And certainly by the counts, that's the second entry long. So that's the way I played that one. But you can see we did make another leg back down here before it kind of rallied a little bit. But by this point, we're just kind of working sideways in this trend here, or in this trend, in this range here. This one was tempting, but I think you got to wait and see if you get something better than that. You're getting too close to the highs, and you're right at the midline. This doesn't quite close on its high. It couldn't even match that high. It's a little dangerous. And we just kind of chop along, and I don't see anything here to give you a decent short, and nothing I really like to go long. I didn't like this one because you made a new low here on this breakout. There's too big a chance it breaks higher and turns down and then turns back up. So, and you can see it kind of struggled to go higher, but it ends up working. Same thing here. You got another new low. You're still making lower high. Notice notice here you're making lower lows and lower highs each time. That's a trend down. And so when you go to buy here, generally you want to wait on, especially if it makes a new low. Notice how that low is lower than any of these other lows. So just to get a little more evidence that we're going to switch and go higher again, you wait on a higher low, and then you know you at least made a lower low, now a higher low, so maybe you'll get that second leg and make a higher high. And so that's why we wait on a higher low here. In other words, if we were coming off the top, it'd be a lower high. People always think that's something magical, and I mean, it's important to be able to spot it because it helps you to know if the momentum's changing. If you're going to start making, if you're making lower lows and lower highs and you're consistently doing that, well, you got a downtrend here. Even though didn't draw it, there's a bit of a downtrend here too, and you can see that right there. And so you got to be careful buying a downtrend. And so that's why when prices got to this lower support here, I wanted to see a higher low and then go higher. And you don't get that. And notice you finally here you get a higher low, but it's no setup. Then you get a failure, but there's not much room. I mean, you got a little resistance all the way across there, so it's really dangerous too. And you can see, even though it went higher, the smart traders probably waited for that last dip, and we don't buy those type of signal bars. I'm not going to buy that, and I'm not going to recommend it. But if it broke higher here, there's a good chance we're going much higher. So because they're going to run the stops, and they're going to trap people right there too. So, but it does run up, and notice how you can see that momentum right there. That's stops they're running, and then all of a sudden it runs out, and then comes right back and tests the breakout area, and then goes higher. And here we go again. Notice what happens is we make a high, we got a higher high, then a lower low, lower high, but then we make a higher low. So the odds are, and you get a nice signal bar. So that's telling me, hey, we're probably going higher here. And look at that signal bar. And I like going long right there. And that's a second entry long because there's a new high, first entry, then it turns down, then second entry. It is an engulfing bar. So I don't think I would trade that on the engulfing bar with that being kind of a no body bar, because this could trend upwards and then turn back down again before it closes. But when it closes real strong like that, you know you're good to go. Runs on up, and again we're trending back down here, and there's another little trap right there. And this two-tiered channel is not really even, I mean, it looks valid. It has never been confirmed. We're playing that, but we keep bouncing early here. And so that really makes you kind of wonder. But anyway, when you make this, you make a little double bottom here, and then you get a higher low, and then you get a failure right there. It breaks lower and turns up. I like going long. Again, I'd probably wait on this bar, but I like going long there. Then you get a real quick second entry long right there, right off of that trend line right there. And that's what we're really playing there. It is a little ways away from the EMA, but there's evidence we're going higher, and you got this shorter term trend line there. This more, I wouldn't say shorter term, but it's kind of micro, and that's what we're playing right now, is these micro trends within the bigger trend. You know, the further you start to get away from the EMA, the more dangerous it gets. So the first one or two, maybe on a real strong move, you might take like that one. I mean, we're not that far away, but much more than that, it gets too dangerous. And the thinking there is, this is a 21 EMA, so this is your average, and prices don't get away from the averages very far. So when they start to get far away from the average, look what happens. They snap back. They get far away, they snap back. You get far away, they snap back. You get far away down here, they snap back. And so we don't enter far away from the EMA in the same direction that they're away. So that's kind of the idea there. We want to enter close to the EMA when prices are reversing on the snapback or the overshoot, if it came way back down here in an uptrend, we know it's going to shoot back to the EMA and probably back through it. So anyway, I like that long there, and then this is too choppy, and we haven't got to the high again, but we keep finding support nearby that middle. So the market's starting to look strong. And I marked this one green. We got one coming back, and it looks like you get the close outside and a new low all in one bar. But I mean, it's hard to say there. But it is right off the key entry point, the green trend line. It's right off the EMA, and this has been a strong trend. So maybe you take that one. It's not a sure thing, but maybe you take that. And you can see we actually get an overshoot here is what it looks like. And you don't want to be shorting this thing. It's too strong, especially inside this green channel. That's the first break. We move to a new low, and unfortunately, I don't see much of a chance. I mean, you might make this one. They make equal lows, so you might trade that as a green. It is a second entry, and there is room back to the EMA, but I'm just a little leery of it. I probably should mark it green because of that overshoot mostly. Once you see that overshoot, you got to be real careful. And of course, we take off higher again, come back, same thing. We get another little overshoot, we come back to it again, and you really got the same setup again. But it's more of a doji. There's no body there. It's not a very bullish bar. It's only 5 ticks. I mean, maybe you risk 5 ticks on a trade like that when this thing's been bouncing at the midline all the way up. So, and I mean, you could argue, I mean, that's just a sideways, so it's only one leg down. So, but you can see it tries to make a second leg down, but you would have scalped out before that happened. So maybe you try to take that trade. I'd probably skip it. And of course, you do get your close outside and a new low, and we run up and it makes one more leg down, and then you make the higher low, and you get a pretty nice bar right there. So when that breaks higher, that's a second entry long. Notice the new swing high, first entry pulls back, and then when it goes higher, it's a second entry long. And off we go again. And notice, and this is where you notice, hey, we're not coming back. We're not coming back to this trend line. So maybe something's changed here. And just start looking around and seeing if, if you draw this, at this point, you probably would have had it like this. And even there, it looks pretty valid. We don't know for sure that's where that line's going to be because it does end up much higher in the end. But within a few minutes, you'll know if that trend line's valid or not. Or at least hopefully you'll know by prices coming back and it holding again. And notice you draw it off these first two, and then it comes back again right here, and you get that higher low. I like taking that. We already talked about it. Even without the trend line, I like that one. But then we kind of work up here. We get a break, new high, and we're just kind of chopping along. Again, I'd be very careful about going short. This has been a strong trend, and we may even have a steeper, it may be steepening, which means it's really strong. And you get a little failed breakout right here. It bounces right off that trend line. It's also a second entry. So there's a trend down, close outside, new low. Then you get a higher low right here. There's actually a reversal, but the problem with that reversal is you don't have a whole lot of room left yet. We're probably going higher anyway. It doesn't matter. But being that close to those highs, it could turn down there again. So you just have to be careful with that one. Just make sure you got room to get out before reaching those highs, and it's not real certain there. If you took it on the engulfing bar, there's probably room. I'd be careful with the engulfing bar. It's just really hard to see. There's so much price action here. There you go. Maybe that's a little better look at it. And you can see it. It broke lower, then turned and went higher. But that's going to trap people. And there's a lot of people that won't know to look for this new trend line. and off it goes. We come back to the trend line here, and you can tell now this is what these strong trends start to look like. There's just lots of little bars with stems. They don't look real strong, but all your corrections are very shallow. And I mean, this whole correction across here was just sideways until the last minute, and then off it goes again. You might argue that this is a triple test right here. We've been away from the EMA a little while. This is definitely congested, so I'd probably skip that one. You know, I'm gonna put it on there just to make it a little more visual for some people that aren't used to looking at the charts. So, but this thing takes off, and then we find the upper side. And once you get that, you can clearly see. And sometimes you can help find this by just drawing this along until, let's move the old one out of here. You just drag it up until the midline does kind of fit, and you can see it's fitting nicely in there. So you might have been able to determine that height by doing that. And there's, sometimes you can come about these things backwards or by coming in from a different angle. Just find that trend line and then see if you can make the midline. And if you just drawn it right there and made the midline fit right there, I mean, you don't know that's it. Maybe it's going to be up here, but draw it and see if it fits along the way. And you can clearly see that midline fits all the way up through there. And that would have given you this target up here before you ever got there. So people are always getting hung up on these trend lines. It's a skill, and you do this for a while, you'll learn to do all this stuff. But you have to work at it and practice at it. So, but we reach the upper side and we start working down. Again, I wouldn't look for any shorts here unless you had some kind of really strong trap, and I don't see that. We're just kind of working sideways before it drops, and look where it bounces. Bounces, and I also did the measure move here. We didn't make it to the low side, which tells you we'll probably go higher, and we did find resistance at the high side into the close. But I like going long right there. It's technically it's not a second entry, but there are two legs back to that trend line. But look how far we are away from the EMA. We've already had our break or close outside. We've got a new low in place, and you probably could argue there's a triple test across there. Or at least a double test. You could argue really that's a triple test. But I like going long there and look at it take off. Pulls back. If you'd had a little better signal bar here, maybe you go long there, but you just don't get it. Takes up a measure and move, comes back, gives you a first entry, second entry, another nice signal bar. You've tested that a couple of times. You don't get a triple test till here. I marked this one green. Because it's a little sideways. We've already made the measured move. We could come back inside here. We didn't quite test the trend line. If that'd been right off the trend line, maybe you take that one. It would have worked, but notice we do come back, and this one does come off the trend line, and now you got a triple test. And you can see that's where it takes off a little more. So that's where the more of your smarter traders that are waiting on the triple test or more information, that's where they're going to come in. Let's just zoom in here a little more. I apologize for just so much price action here. But then we make the higher low and go along there again, and then that takes us into 230. And so really strong day, and really kind of a different day because it's not very often that you get a spike in channel that creates a steeper channel, but it does happen sometimes, and that's what happened today. This thing got stronger as the day went on. So, interesting day. Especially for no news item. I mean, there is the FOMC, but that, here's 130 right in here, and most of the rally was over by then. So it's not like he said anything that really took the market off unless it was way up here. We did get that last, but my guess is that's just a last minute surge of probably some institutional buying that we're going to buy on the close today or something. So anyway, there it is. Pretty interesting day. A little longer lesson today, almost 25 minutes here, but a lot to go over there. Some interesting stuff. So hopefully you learn something today as well. And there's a look after yesterday. But anyway, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next.